The valley of Oak Haven was usually lush and green, but this year the grayness had settled in like an unwanted guest. In a crumbling cottage at the very edge of the village, where the cobblestones turned to dirt, lived a widow named Martha and her teenage son Jack. They were not just poor, they were destitute. The roof leaked when it rained, creating a rhythm of drip, drip, drip that marked the passing of their miserable nights. Their cupboards were not bare, they were dusty, housing only the memories of food. Jack was a good-hearted boy, though perhaps a bit too prone to staring at the clouds rather than hoeing the rocky garden patch. He had a mop of unruly hair and eyes that always seemed to be looking for something that wasn't there. He loved his mother dearly, but the weight of their poverty sat heavy on his young shoulders. Their only possession of value, their only friend really, was Milky White. She was a beautiful cow with a coat the color of fresh cream and eyes that seemed to understand human sorrow. For years, Milky White had been the miracle that kept them alive. Every morning, she gave enough rich, frothy milk to fill 2 pails. Jack would carry these pails to the market, and the villagers who loved the quality of the milk would buy it eagerly. But nature is fickle. One Tuesday morning, the air in the barn felt colder than usual. Jack sat on his 3-legged stool, patted Milky White's flank, and began to milk her. Nothing happened. He tried again, not a drop. Milky White turned her head and let out a low, mournful lowing sound. "It's all right, old girl," Jack whispered, though his stomach tightened with ice-cold fear. "You're just tired." He ran into the house. "Mom, Milky White, she's dry, there's no milk." Martha dropped the rag she was using to clean the empty table. Her face, already lined with worry, seemed to collapse. "No milk? Jack, are you sure?" "I tried for 10 minutes, she's empty." Martha sank into a chair and buried her face in her hands. "That was it, Jack. That was the last thing we had. If we have no milk to sell, we have no money for bread, we have no money for wood." "We'll figure something out," Jack said, trying to sound braver than he felt. "I'll get a job. The miller needs help, doesn't he?" "We've tried, Jack," she said, her voice trembling. "Everyone is struggling. No one is hiring. There is only one thing left to do." She looked up, her eyes brimming with tears. "We must sell Milky White." "Sell her?" Jack gasped. "But she's family. We can't sell her to the butcher." "We have to eat, Jack," Martha said firmly, though her heart was breaking too. "It's market day today. Take her to town. She's a fine cow. She still has strong muscles and a good coat. If you get a good price, we can buy enough grain to last the winter and maybe invest in some knitting wool to start a shop." The walk to the market was the longest of Jack's life. The dust of the road kicked up around his worn boots. Milky White walked beside him, her rope loose in his hand. She didn't pull or struggle, she seemed to know. "I'm sorry," Jack whispered to her repeatedly. "I'm so sorry." He was miles from the market, passing through a shadowed grove of ancient oak trees when the air suddenly shimmered. It wasn't a fog exactly. It was more like the air itself became thick and colorful, like oil on water. Stepping out from behind a twisted tree trunk was a man. He was unlike anyone Jack had ever seen. He wore a coat that seemed to be stitched together from autumn leaves, and his hat was floppy and adorned with a single iridescent feather. He was old, his face a map of wrinkles, but his eyes were bright, piercing blue and full of mischief. "Good morning, Jack," the man said. His voice sounded like dry leaves rustling together. Jack stopped. "Good morning," he said, gripping the rope tighter. "How do you know my name?" The old man chuckled. "Oh, I know many things. I know the wind's secrets, and I know where you're going, to the market, to sell a cow that gives no milk." Jack stepped back. "Who are you?" "A friend," the man said. He stepped closer, examining Milky White. "She's a fine beast. It seems a shame to sell her for a few coins that will be spent in a week. Once the money is gone, you'll be poor again." "What then, Jack?" Jack looked down. "I don't know." "You look like the sort of chap who wants more than just survival," the man said softly. "You look like a boy who knows how many beans make 5. 2 in each hand and 1 in your mouth," Jack replied instinctively. It was an old riddle his father used to tell him. The man clapped his hands. "Sharp, sharp as a needle. Because you are so clever, I will make you an offer. I will save you the trouble of the long walk to the market. I will buy your cow right here." "I need money," Jack said. "At least 10 gold coins." "Money is common," the man scoffed. "Money is heavy and boring. I have something better." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. He opened it and poured the contents into his palm. 5 beans. But they were not ordinary beans. They sparkled in the dim forest light. One was ruby red, one emerald green, one sapphire blue, one pearly white, and one pure gold. They seemed to hum with faint energy. Beans? Jack asked, disappointed. Not just beans, the man whispered, leaning in. These are seeds of the impossible. Plant them overnight, and by morning they will grow right up to the sky. They are the keys to a destiny you can't even imagine. To the sky? Jack looked at the beans, mesmerized. If I am lying, the man said with a wink, you can come back here tomorrow and I will give you your cow back. Is that a deal? Jack looked at Milky White. He looked at the magical beans. He thought of his mother's sad face and the endless cycle of poverty. He wanted to believe in magic. He wanted a way out. Deal, Jack said. He handed the rope to the man, took the beans, and ran all the way home, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. When Jack burst through the door, the sun hadn't even set. Back so soon? Martha asked, looking up from the fireless hearth. You couldn't have gone to the market and back. Did you change your mind? Then she saw his empty hands. Where is Milky White? I sold her, Mom, Jack said, breathless. I got a price you wouldn't believe. Martha's eyes lit up with hope. Oh, Jack, did you get 10 pounds, 15? Please tell me it was enough for the winter. Better than money, Jack said, beaming. He opened his hand. Look. Martha stared at the 5 colorful beans. She blinked. She looked at Jack, then back at the beans. The silence in the room was deafening. Beans? She whispered. Her voice wasn't angry, it was crushed. You traded our livelihood, our only asset, the only thing keeping us from starvation, for beans. They're magical, Mom. The man said if we plant them overnight. Magical? Martha's voice rose, cracking with hysteria. There is no such thing as magic, Jack. There is only hunger. You foolish, foolish boy, you've ruined us. She didn't hit him. She was too weak and too heartbroken for violence, but her disappointment hurt worse than any blow. She grabbed the beans from his hand. This is what I think of your magic. She threw them out the open window. They disappeared into the dark soil of the garden. Go to your room, she sobbed. I can't look at you right now. We have no food, so there is no supper. Go to sleep and pray we survive the week. Jack climbed the ladder to his attic room, tears streaming down his face. He felt stupid. The old man had tricked him. He had failed his mother. He curled up on his straw mattress, his stomach growling, and eventually cried himself into a fitful sleep. Jack woke up because the birds were singing, but they sounded different. They sounded distant. He opened his eyes. The room was strange. Usually the morning sun flooded his attic, but today a strange green twilight filled the space. Shadows of leaves the size of tables, danced across the floor. He scrambled out of bed and went to the window. His jaw dropped. Where the beans had landed, something impossible had happened. A stalk, thick as a castle tower and green as a deep emerald, had erupted from the earth. It twisted and braided itself upwards, rising higher than the roof, higher than the village church, higher than the mountains, disappearing straight into the clouds. The man spoke the truth, Jack whispered. He didn't hesitate. The despair of the previous night vanished, replaced by burning curiosity. He climbed out of his window and tested the stalk. The leaves formed a natural sturdy staircase. The vines were like ropes. Jack began to climb. Up he went. The cottage shrank to the size of a toy. The village became a patchwork quilt of browns and greens. The air grew colder and thinner. Birds circled below him now. He climbed for hours, his muscles burning, but the adrenaline kept him going. Finally, he pierced through a thick layer of white clouds. He pulled himself up onto a solid ledge. He wasn't on Earth anymore. He was standing at the edge of a floating continent. The sky here was a deep, shimmering purple. A long white road stretched out before him, leading toward a massive structure in the distance. It was a castle, but built on a scale that made Jack feel like an ant. The doors were 50 feet high. The stones were the size of houses. Jack walked down the road, feeling like an intruder in a land of gods. As he approached the castle, he saw a woman standing on the doorstep. She was immense, easily 20 feet tall, but she didn't look monstrous. She wore a simple apron and looked tired. Jack took a deep breath. "Good morning, ma'am," he shouted, trying to be heard. The woman looked down, squinting. "What's this? A little midget?" "I'm a boy, ma'am. My name is Jack. I've come from down below. I'm dreadfully hungry. Could you spare a bite of breakfast?" The woman sighed, shaking her head. "You are a bold one, aren't you? It's breakfast you want? It's breakfast you'll be if you don't skedaddle. My husband is a giant, and he doesn't take kindly to strangers. He says humans are crunchy." "Please," Jack pleaded, clutching his stomach. "I haven't eaten since yesterday. I'd rather be eaten by a giant than starve to death on your doorstep." The giantess, whose name was Brunhilde, had a soft spot for small, helpless things. "Oh, all right, but be quick about it." She scooped him up. Her hand was the size of a bathtub and carried him into the kitchen. She set him on the table and gave him a crumb of cheese, which was as big as a brick, and a thimble of milk, which was like a bucket. Jack was halfway through the cheese when the floor jumped. Thump, thump, thump. The rhythm shook the plates on the shelves. "Oh dear," Brunhilde whispered frantically. "He's back early. Quick, into the oven." She grabbed Jack and shoved him into the cold side of the massive iron oven, leaving the door cracked just a sliver. The giant stormed in. He was a mountain of muscle and hair with a voice like a landslide. "Fee, fi, fo, fum," he bellowed. "I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread." "Don't be silly, dear," Brunhilde said soothingly. "You always smell Englishman. It's probably the sheep you caught yesterday. Go wash your hands and I'll serve your breakfast." The giant grumbled, sniffing the air suspiciously, but he went to the wash basin. When he returned, he ate a breakfast of 3 roasted oxen. Jack watched, terrified, through the crack in the oven door. After eating, the giant yawned. "Wife, bring me my gold." Brunhilde placed 2 heavy canvas bags on the table. The giant opened them and poured out a cascade of gold coins. He sat there counting them, clink, 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 until his eyelids grew heavy. Soon his head dropped and he began to snore. The snoring was so loud the oven door rattled. Jack knew this was his chance. He crept out of the oven. He climbed up the table leg like a squirrel. He grabbed one of the bags of gold. It was heavy, almost as big as he was, but he managed to hoist it onto his shoulder. He scrambled down and ran. He ran out the door, down the white road, and to the Beanstalk. He dropped the bag down the hole, watching it fall, and then scrambled down after it. Life in Oak Haven changed overnight. Jack and Martha fixed the roof. They bought warm clothes. They filled the cupboards with food. They even helped their neighbors, buying medicine for the sick and wood for the elderly. For a while, they were happy. But the gold didn't last forever, and more importantly, Jack felt a pull. The sky was calling him. He missed the thrill. He missed the strange purple sky. "I'm going back," Jack announced one morning. "No, Jack," his mother cried. "We have enough. Don't push your luck. The giant will eat you this time." "I have to, Mom. There are things up there, wonders." He climbed the stalk again. This time, he didn't knock on the door. He knew better. He hid in the bushes until he saw Brunhilde come out to shake a rug. He slipped past her and hid in the kitchen, diving into a massive copper pot on the shelf. The routine was the same. Thump, thump, thump. Fee, fi, fo, fum. "I smell him again, wife. I smell that little thief," the giant roared, overturning chairs. "Nonsense," Brunhilde said, though she looked nervous. "It's just the scraps from the crows you roasted. Sit down." The giant ate. Then he yelled, "Wife, bring me the hen." Brunhilde brought in a beautiful, fluffy white hen. She set it on the table. "Lay," commanded the giant. The hen clucked softly and laid an egg, but it wasn't white. It was solid, glittering gold. Jack's eyes widened. A hen that laid golden eggs. With that, they would never need to steal again. They would be secure forever. The giant fell asleep. Jack climbed out of the copper pot. He grabbed the hen. "Don't make a sound," he whispered to the bird. But as he ran to the door, the hen gave a loud, panicked squawk. The giant snorted and opened one eye. "Huh." Jack bolted. He heard the giant rising, but he was already out the door. He scrambled down the beanstalk, the hen tucked under his arm. When he got home, he showed his mother. "Look, lay!" The hen laid a golden egg. Martha wept with relief. "You are safe. Promise me, Jack. No more. We have everything we need." "I promise," Jack said. And he meant it. For a year, he didn't go back. He studied, he worked the garden, just for fun, and he grew into a young man. But curiosity is a powerful itch. Jack couldn't stop thinking about the castle. What else was there? And he felt a strange guilt. He had stolen from the giant, yes, but the giant was a hoarder. There was something else. He remembered seeing a harp in the corner of the room, a harp that looked sad. One summer morning, before the sun rose, Jack crept to the beanstalk. Just one last time, he whispered. The climb was harder this time. The vines were overgrown. The sky kingdom was silent. Jack sneaked into the castle. He didn't hide in the oven or the pot. He hid in the bread box, peering through the ventilation holes. The giant came in. He looked angrier than ever. Fee, fi, fo, fum, I know he is here. He tore the room apart. He checked the oven. Empty. He checked the copper pot. Empty. He smashed the cupboards. You're imagining things, dear, Brunhilde said, trembling. Please eat your breakfast. The giant ate, grumbling. Then he shouted, Bring me the harp. I need music to soothe my rage. Brunhilde placed a golden harp on the table. It was exquisite, with strings that shimmered like starlight. But the most amazing thing was the face carved into the gold, a beautiful, sad face of a woman. Ah, sing, the giant barked. The harp didn't need fingers to play it. It began to play itself. The melody was haunting, a song of trapped winds and lonely mountaintops. It was the most beautiful thing Jack had ever heard. It made him want to cry. The music worked. The giant's eyes drooped. His breathing slowed. Soon his thunderous snore shook the bread box. Jack knew this was the most dangerous moment. He pushed open the bread box lid. He crept across the table. He looked at the harp. I'm going to get you out of here, Jack whispered. He grabbed the harp. Suddenly, the harp cried out, not a musical note, but a voice. Master! Master! I am being stolen! Wake up! The giant's eyes flew open. He saw Jack. You! The giant roared. The sound was like a bomb going off. Jack didn't think. He jumped off the table, clutching the harp. He ran. Come back here, you mite! The giant scrambled up, knocking the table over. Jack sprinted down the long white road. He could feel the vibrations of the giant's footsteps behind him. Boom, boom, boom. Master, help! The harp screamed. Quiet, Jack panted. I'm trying to save you. He reached the beanstalk. He threw himself onto the vines and began to slide down, burning his hands on the leaves. I'm coming for you, the giant bellowed. Jack looked up. The giant was swinging his massive body onto the beanstalk. The entire plant groaned and shook under the weight. The sky darkened as the giant descended, blocking the sun. Jack slid faster. The wind whipped his face. He could hear the snapping of branches above him. The giant was fast. Mom! Jack screamed as the ground came into view. Mom! Martha was in the garden. She looked up and screamed. She saw the massive dark shape descending through the clouds. The axe! Jack yelled, hitting the ground and stumbling. Get the axe! Martha didn't freeze. She ran to the woodpile and grabbed the heavy iron axe. She threw it to Jack. Jack caught it. The beanstalk was shaking violently now. The giant's boots were visible through the mist, huge and terrifying. Fee, fee, fo. The voice boomed from above, shaking the cottage. Jack swung the axe with all his might. Thwack! The blade bit deep into the green stalk. The plant shuddered. Thwack! He cut halfway through. The giant stopped moving, sensing the instability. Don't you dare! The giant roared. Thwack! Jack severed the main vine. It was like a slow-motion earthquake. The massive beanstalk groaned, a sound like a dying whale. It began to tilt. It leaned and then fell. The giant lost his grip. He fell through the air, flailing, crash! The impact was miles away in a deep ravine behind the hills. The ground jumped like a trampoline. A massive cloud of dust rose up. Then silence. Jack stood there, chest heaving, gripping the axe. The harp lay on the grass beside him, silent now. Martha ran to him and hugged him so hard he almost lost his breath. It's over, she sobbed. It's over. They didn't go check the ravine. They knew the giant was gone. Life settled down after that. The beanstalk withered away, leaving only a memory. Jack kept the golden harp. Once it realized the giant was gone and that Jack wasn't going to shout at it, it stopped calling for its master. Instead, it played happy songs, jigs, and reels that made people want to dance. The golden hen continued to lay eggs, but Jack and Martha used the wealth wisely. They didn't just build a mansion, they built a school for the village. They built a new barn for everyone to use. Jack eventually bought Milky White back from the old man, who he found sitting under the same tree, smiling mysteriously. The cow had a calf now, and she seemed happy to be home. Jack grew up to be a wise man. He never forgot the fear of the giant, nor the hunger of poverty. He learned that luck, like magic beans, is a gift, but what you do with it defines who you are. And on quiet nights, when the wind howled through the valley, Jack would sit by the fire, listen to the harp sing of the clouds, and remember the time he touched the sky.